If you've been telling yourself that once you feel motivated, things will finally fall into place, this episode is for you. Because motivation is not what's missing, and waiting to feel ready is often what keeps businesses stuck. Today, we're talking about why motivation doesn't fix broken systems and what creates momentum.
You're listening to the Off Balance Podcast, where faith, family, and business collide. Hosted by Brooks Deming, Doctor of Business Administration, business coach, and resilience expert. Each episode features real-life conversations to help entrepreneurs like you build resilience and lead with confidence.
Welcome back to Off Balance. I'm your host, Dr. Brooks. This podcast is for entrepreneurs and professionals who want clarity instead of confusion and structure instead of stress. So far this season, we've talked about why your business feels harder than it should, why being busy doesn't equal profit, and the HR risks small businesses ignore. Today, we're addressing something almost everyone leans on when things feel heavy: motivation. And I want to be clear, motivation is helpful, but it's unreliable. The problem with motivation is it comes and goes. It's emotional, it's reactive, and it's often tied to how things are going in the moment. When revenue is up, motivation is high. When things slow down, motivation drops. That makes it a dangerous foundation for leadership. If your business only moves forward when you feel inspired, it will always stall when things get uncomfortable, and growth is uncomfortable by nature. People consume motivational content instead of fixing their systems. They listen to podcasts, they attend workshops, they read books, they save quotes, they screenshot reels, and yet nothing changes. Not because they don't learn anything, but because learning without implementation feels productive without being effective. Motivation becomes a substitute for structure. It feels good in the moment, it sounds right, it gives you energy, but it doesn't hold up under pressure. And this isn't just my opinion as a coach, this is something I studied during my doctoral research. My dissertation research focused on strategies that motivate employees in the workplace. What I found was consistent across industries and roles. Sustainable motivation does not come from hype, speeches, or temporary emotional boosts. It comes from clarity, alignment, and role definitions and systems that support people doing their work well. In other words, motivation works best after structure is in place, not before. Let me give you an example of what I see all the time. I work with a business owner who tells me they're feeling stuck, tired, and unmotivated. They have invested in multiple courses, attended conferences, and listens to hours of content. But when we look at their business, here's what I find. They don't have clear priorities. Their roles and responsibilities are blurred. Everything feels urgent. The calendar is full, but nothing is moving forward. They're making decisions reactively instead of intentionally. So, of course, they feel unmotivated. Motivation didn't disappear. It got buried under confusion. Instead of addressing the lack of structure, they go back to consuming more motivation. Another podcast, another workshop, another inspirational message. And for a moment, they feel better. But the minute pressure hits, the system collapses again. That's because motivation was never the real issue. From a teaching and coaching perspective, this is a classic misdiagnosis. Motivation is emotional fuel. Systems are the engine. You can't drive far on fuel alone if the engine isn't built. This is something that my research confirmed. Employees and leaders are far more motivated when they understand what's expected of them, how their work fits into the bigger picture, and what success looks like on a daily basis. When people don't have that, motivation becomes fragile. It depends on mood, it depends on energy, it depends on external encouragement, and that's not sustainable. So here's a teachable moment I want you to sit with. If you constantly feel like you need to get motivated again, that's a signal. Not that you're lazy or unfocused, but that your systems aren't supporting you. Ask yourself this: do I have clear priorities? Do I know what moves the needle? Do I have structure around my time, decisions, and responsibilities? Because once structure is in place, motivation doesn't have to be chased, it shows up naturally. Motivation is not meant to carry the weight of your business, your leadership, or your life. Structure is. And when those two are in the right order, motivation becomes a powerful supplement instead of a distraction. Now let's approach it from an HR lens. From the standpoint that systems create consistency. So, from the HR standpoint, no organization relies on motivation alone. That's not how real workplaces function, and it's not how sustainable businesses are built. Systems exist because people are human. They get tired, they have days off, they lose focus, they carry personal stress into professional spaces. Some days they show up at 100%, and some days they don't. HR doesn't plan for the best days, it plans for the normal ones. That's why policies, processes, and clear expectation exist. Not to control people, but to create consistency when energy fluctuates. When motivation dips, the work still moves forward because the structure is already in place. Let me give you a simple example. In an organization, you don't rely on an employee's motivation to decide whether payroll get processed, clients get followed up with, or deadlines are met. There are documented procedures, timelines, approvals, and accountability measures. Not because leadership assumes people are lazy, but because leadership understands people are human. Now translate that to your business. If your content only gets posted when you feel inspired, consistency will always be fragile. If your client follow-up, revenue will fluctuate. If planning only happens when you feel motivated, growth will stay unpredictable. That's not a motivation problem, that's a system gap. When everything depends on how you feel, you're forced to keep restarting. You replan, you reset, you recommit, and you wonder why things never feel stable, even though you're working hard. From an HR lens, that's exactly what happens in organizations without structure. High performers burn out, results vary widely, leaders feel like they're constantly putting out fires, not because people don't care, but because there's nothing holding the work steady. Systems don't replace passion, they protect progress. They allow you to move forward on days when your energy is low. They keep decisions consistent when emotions change. They make sure the effort turns into outcomes. Motivation is a great starting point, but systems are what keep you from starting over. And if you want your business to feel less exhausting and more stable, then this is where the shift begins. So from a coaching lens, why people wait for motivation? Waiting for motivation is often fear in disguise. Not always obvious fear, not panic, not self-doubt that announces itself loudly. It's quieter than that. It's fear of making the wrong decisions, fear of choosing a direction and realizing it doesn't work, fear of committing to a path and having to follow through, fear of accountability, especially when no one else is to blame. Motivation feels safe because it doesn't require action. You can listen, you can plan, you can think, you can tell yourself you're getting ready. And in coaching sessions, I see this pattern all the time. Highly capable people who are doing a lot of thinking, a lot of consuming, a lot of preparing, but very little deciding. Because once you decide, things change. Clarity demands responsibility. So when you're clear, you can't hide behind confusion anymore. You can't say, I don't know what to do. You can't blame timing, energy, or circumstances as easily. Once you know what needs to change, you can't unsee it, and that's uncomfortable. Now, the choice is yours. You can either act or you can knowingly stay stuck. You either adjust the system or you accept the cost of leaving it as is. Here's an example I often walk clients through. A business owner tells me they feel unmotivated and overwhelmed. They're waiting to feel inspired again. But when we map out their week, it becomes clear they already know the problem. Too many commitments, no boundaries, no clear focus on what produces results. What usually surprises them is they are not unmotivated. They are overloaded. They have information without integration. Basically, they have ideas without infrastructure. So they keep consuming, hoping the next strategy will unlock something special. But the real issue is not effort, it's the absence of structure that tells the effort where to go. When there are no defined roles, no documented processes, no clear decision authority, the brain stays in survival mode. Every task feels urgent, every decision feels personal. And those setbacks, they begin to feel like a reflection of identity instead of a gap in the system. And that can be exhausting. In organizational psychology, they talk about role clarity as a predictor of performance and engagement. When people know what they are responsible for and what they are not responsible for, cognitive load decreases. Energy becomes focused instead of scattered. The same principle applies to entrepreneurs. If you wake up every day deciding from scratch what matters most, you'll feel stuck. Not because you lack ambition, but because your environment is not designed to support consistent action. Motivation is not a personality trait. It is often a structural outcome. So when we slow down and map the business, define the top 3 priorities, clarify decision rights, and create a simple, repeatable workflow, oftentimes things shift for the entrepreneur. The same person who said, I just don't feel motivated anymore, they start moving again. They don't need more motivation, they need fewer options. But making that call means saying no. It means disappointing someone. It means letting go of an identity that they've been carrying. So instead, they wait for motivation to magically return. From a coaching standpoint, the waiting isn't passive, it's protective. It protects you from being wrong. It protects you from having to explain your choices. Motivation isn't what moves people forward, decisions do. Clarity doesn't show up to make you comfortable, it shows up to make you honest. And when you stop waiting to feel ready and start choosing intentionally, motivation tends to follow. Not because things feel easy, but because your energy finally has a direction. That's the work. And that's when real progress begins. So, from an educational lens, learning requires application. People don't change because they feel inspired, they change because they apply what they learn. This is a core principle in the adult learning theory. Adults learn differently than children. They are problem centered, experience driven, and motivated by relevance. Don't learn best by collecting information. They learn best when they can immediately apply knowledge to real situations. That's why inspiration alone doesn't create change. When adults learn something but don't use it, it creates friction. They know better, but nothing is different. Over time, the gap between knowledge and action turns into frustration, self-blame, and disengagement. Employees attend training, leadership invests in development, everyone leaves energized, and then nothing changes on the job. No clear expectations, no opportunity to practice, no accountability loop. The moment someone uses what they learn, even imperfectly, something shifts. They gain clarity, they build confidence, they see results, and that reinforces motivation inspiration can never. Now bring this back to your business. Your business doesn't need more information. What's missing is implementation. Implementation looks like choosing one strategy and applying it consistently. It looks like building systems that support follow through. It looks like translating ideas into actions and actions into habits. From an HR and coaching perspective, this is the difference between growth and stagnation. Information tells you what's possible. Implementation proves what works. So learning is paired with application. Motivation will always fade. Progress will always feel temporary, and frustration will keep returning. Your business doesn't need another idea, it needs execution. Momentum comes from systems, not feelings. So you need clear priorities, defined roles, repeatable processes, accountability. And when those are in place, progress continues even on low energy days. And then you will begin to see sustainability. So here's the reframe. Motivation is a feeling, structure is a foundation. Feelings fade, foundations hold. If your business feels stalled, don't ask how to get motivated. Ask what system is missing. If you are listening to this episode and it's resonating and you're realizing that you've been waiting on motivation instead of building structure, this is what we address in the Business and HR Clarity Audit. In that session, we identify what systems are missing, where decisions are stalling, and what needs to be implemented first. So you can stop starting over. The link to book your audit is in the description of this episode. Remember this, motivation is temporary, but structure creates momentum.
Thanks for listening. Please rate this episode and share it with your family and friends. To learn more about your host or to book a coaching session, visit www.brooksdeming.com. Until next time, rise.
Hi, I'm Tiffany of Tiffany Brown Designs. With over 20 years of creative experience across industries, I create and elevate brands one design at a time through intentional graphic and brand design, polished film and video editing, and creative artistry. Even the music you're hearing right now, that was produced by me. I also create custom tracks for websites, intros and outros, and content. So what are you waiting for? Visit TiffanyCBrownGD.com and let's bring your vision to life.